Hi, everyone. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sarah Mendelson. I'm here from the GPL marketing team, and we're really excited to start our webinar, Rethinking Cyber Resilience to Protect Your Creative Pipeline in 2023. In the next hour, Jason Proctor and Andy Mnookin, two of the industry's top cybersecurity experts, will discuss how cybersecurity threats are undeniably on the rise and how you can protect your business. They will share with us the anatomy of a cyber attack, details of cyber resilience, the best practices to ensure your ability to recover, and more. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our presenters today. Jason Proctor will be speaking first. Jason is a member of Dell Technologies Data Protection Solutions Global Technology Office as an advisory systems engineer for cyber recovery and compliance. Jason has led conversations with and has advised hundreds of clients on data protection and cyber recovery across many verticals around the globe, as well as has presented at several major conferences such as Dell Technologies World, VMworld, IBM Think, and others. After Jason, we'll hand over the presentation to Andy Mnookin, and he'll share his expertise with us. Andy has been with GPL Technologies for over 15 years, with a strong focus on information security and systems management in post-production for the media and entertainment industry. He's a certified information systems security professional with a large breadth of experience spanning security compliance, audits, vulnerability testing, and more. We are so excited to have both of them here today, sharing their knowledge and experience with us. After hearing from Jason and Andy, we will reserve the last 15 minutes of the hour for a Q&A, so be sure to write down any questions you have throughout the webinar. We're also giving away 4 Amazon gift cards, and we'll announce the winners as we close the webinar. With no further ado, I'll hand the presentation off to Jason Proctor. Thank you very much.
No, and thank you, Sarah. Much appreciated. Looking forward to our time together today, and good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're coming from. My name again is Jason Proctor. I am an advisory systems engineer out of Dell's Global Technology Office. What I do primarily is I work with our clients on a regular basis to advise them on solutions, advise them on industry trends, advise them on best practices, things along those lines. I also work with our partner community, just like JPL, on building site, enabling content and things along those lines that work best. So kind of one of the things that we talked about right off the front is, kind of what's going on out there. Things are evolving, things are changing, things are accelerating, not only in terms of number of attacks, but transversely in terms of the sophistication of those attacks. We're seeing attacks now, and one of the things that I tell folks to do is, follow the regulatory, follow the guidance that you're seeing from those trusted sources. One of them that I use is the Cybersecurity and Information Security Agency, or CISA. They're part of Department of Homeland Security. They're with the federal government, but not only do they coordinate the federal cyber policies, but they also coordinate with those all around the globe. And one of the most recent things that they came out with as a binding operational directive is paying more attention to things like config changes. The bad actors are doing more than just going after your data and encrypting your data and saying, hey, give us, our ransom. And ransomware is one part of the overall problem. Data exfiltration is a big part of it. And sometimes it's just, hacktivism. They disrupt operations just to disrupt. So it's not just one thing that we're trying to tackle here, but we need to make sure that we're being cognizant of the things that are going on out there and doing the things from our perspective, from our organization's perspective, that are going to give us the best chance of not only defending ourselves, but also, should the worst happen, being resilient enough to be able to recover. One of the things that we're seeing, if you go back into the original area, yeah, great, we had this great monolithic data center that okay, we only needed to protect what was in our four walls. Even Exchange was still on site. Move forward a little bit further, and okay, now we've got service providers, whether it was software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, cloud providers, things along those lines. And now we sit in this environment where you've got the data center, you've got those service providers, those hyperscalers, those other entities that creates a larger attack surface. And one of the things that I see anyway from that perspective is you will typically have one group that runs the hyperscalers or public cloud. You'll have another group that runs the internal data center. And it's somewhat disjointed or segmented off. We're now entering that era, excuse me, with an application and data pipes all across the multi-cloud topology. Stuff is coming at us from everywhere, even mobile phones. We'll get into that here in a little bit. IoT, endpoint devices. There's so many different areas that organizations really need to start coming together on a holistic approach versus kind of the segmented where I see a lot of them happen today. Zero trust is a big thing. And it's zero trust is that continuous and universal authentication and re-authentication versus optional. We'll get you when you enter, and then once you're in there, you're trusted, you're good. Or that risk management, and basically it's trust nothing, allow known good behavior only and prohibit everything else. That's zero trust. Whereas once you've been trusted, the only thing security does is prevent known bad behavior, but assumes everything else you're doing is good. And then threat management, because the authentication policy, devices from known parameters is easily detected. Whereas, it's disconnected from the users and their behavior in a traditional approach. And in fact, you got to keep in mind that it's an overall architecture. It's not just a single product or single solution that you can bring in and it cures all ills. It's point solutions that we bring in perpetuate that fragmentation that I talked about, not just between cloud and on-prem, but even between InfoSec, information security and data protection and things along those lines. And then, some of the manufacturers and OEMs are to blame a little bit here. In fact, Jen Easterly, who's the head of CISA, was recently at CES, and among other things, she talked about the fact that we need to be better with our APIs and standard compliance from an OEM perspective, from a software developer perspective, so that we can better combat the threats that are out there. So what is Dell doing to hopefully make it easier for our customers? And we've adopted Zero Trust as our security North Star. And in fact, we did a press release in October. And now we're a month and a half away from this environment, but we're delivering that cybersecurity solution environment. It's basically it's called our Zero Trust Center of Excellence. And it's based where the U.S. Department of Defense and the U.S. Cyber Command have their base of operations. And we're leveraging the U.S. Department of Defense approved architecture for our roadmap and how we're going to test environments and certify these environments. Now, Dell's in a very unique position, and this is more kind of where our thought process is and things along those lines. But Dell's in a very unique position because we are an OEM. So we need to make sure that we're doing things like secure development. We are a provider of equipment. We need to make sure, whether it's the endpoint, whether it's the server, the storage, the hyperconverged, the network, that all of those devices work together, not only within Dell, but with other manufacturers and OEMs as well. We need to provide that data protection so that we ensure that data survivability. And we need to provide that cyber recovery to ensure that data availability should the worst happen. All those things come together, and we're leading the way in terms of our zero trust and what we're doing around that. And it's regardless of which OEM, which manufacturer, which solution we work with. But ultimately, cyber resilience is an outcome. That outcome is going to require a new level of collaboration within an organization. It involves the people, the process, the technology into that holistic framework that protects an entire business, organization, or entity. It's business operations defining the requirements. What's the risk that we're willing to accept? What's the recovery time? What needs to be involved in that recovery from a services level? And then it's up to technology, the information security, the infrastructure owners, the application owners to ultimately develop that solution to solve the issue. I leverage a lot of MITRE, and MITRE attack.mitre.org is actually one of the places that I go, and it's a full open source. They've mapped out a lot of these threats that we see out there, and they defined it by tactics, the why. Why are they doing what they are doing? And there's 14 of them built within the enterprise. But again, I said, remember, keep your eyes on mobile. There's 14 tactics for mobile. Even further down the list, there's also industrial control systems. There's 12 different tactics. Underneath all of those tactics are the techniques. And those are the why, or the how an adversary achieves the why. 193 techniques with 401 sub-techniques. These are enterprise level techniques that are being leveraged. Now, I used to say that the bad actors out there aren't just some kid in their mom's basement. Well, there happened to be a kid in his mom's basement in the UK. Now, granted, he got caught pretty quick, but he was a little successful there for a little while. And he's leveraging these enterprise level tactics and techniques. And it starts even before they gain access to your network. It starts with reconnaissance and resource development. This is where a lot of that ransomware as a service comes in. You buy those reconnaissance and resource development capabilities. And then at some point, they're going to go ahead and gather initial access to the environment. They're going to unlock the doors, unlock the windows, however it is that they get in, whether it's through, spear phishing attack, an email scam, a social media, whatever you want, a vulnerability. CISA maintains a list of all vulnerabilities. They also provide updates on patches that are available, but even more important, they keep a catalog of known exploited vulnerabilities. Again, going back to those binding operational directives, federal government agencies that fall under the purview of CISA have 30 days to mitigate that known exploited vulnerability. They don't have a choice. But once they're inside the environment, they execute, they persist, they escalate privileges, and then they evade those defenses. That's where they turn off the alarm systems. And once they do that, they're free to roam. They gain credential access. Either they will steal somebody's, or they'll create their own within the network. They'll discover. And if it is ransom related or disruptive related, they typically go after 3 different areas. Number one is they go after any means that you have to be able to recover, whether that's directly or indirectly. Directly is they try to disable the catalog, the backup software, the device where the data lives, or even just delete the data itself. Indirectly leads me to area number 2 is they go after your core components of your environment. They go after the things that make the network work. All those things that you need, the Active Directory, the domain controllers, the DNS, the LDAP, the switch and router configs, load balancer settings, host and build tools. The third thing they go after your most critical applications and the associated data. As I said before, data exfiltration by itself is a cyber incident. It's a data breach. You see there later through, they have collection and exfiltration activities. They're stealing the data. Happens on a regular basis without disruption. But again, if they are trying to get a ransom and the disruption is great enough that it's time and labor intensive to get back up to operations, the more likely they are to get paid, and they know that. Now, the dwell period between initial access and attack launched, according to Ponemon Institute and IBM Security Cost of a Data Breach 2022, and I've got the link there, so when you get a copy of this deck, you'll have the link, is 207 days. Those 207 days, almost 7 months, basically make one assumption that you have to make. Anything connected to production IT is subject to compromise or corruption, again, directly or indirectly. And if you are hit, if the attack is launched, if the impact is made, if the boom happens, this is what you're facing. You're facing Active Directory going away, data centers isolated, email access blocked, network management, IP phone systems are down, Windows logins disabled, vCenter DNS erased. And the average recovery and containment period, again, according to the same study, is 70 days, almost 2.5 months. The basics of cyber resilience start with information security. It's making sure we protect the perimeter as well as the inside of the network from the bad actors. Try to find that problem, stop it, or find it before it truly becomes a problem. But you've got to build on top of that, because InfoSec needs to be right 100% of the time. The bad actor only needs to be right once. And in fact, Gartner wrote a paper through their Maverick Research division called "You're Going to Be Hacked, So Embrace the Breach." And it talks about the need to get away from a protect-only scenario and build a cyber resilient one. Step number 2 is the data protection, ensuring the survivability of data. Data is the new currency. Data is gold. In fact, it's more valuable than gold in a lot of cases. You need to ensure that survivability and build in the business continuity. Should a force majeure event, a weather-related event, a fire event, true disaster recovery. But cyber is different, and that's why cyber recovery is the third part there, because that ensures the accessibility to data. That ensures that if you are impacted and your environment is gone or offline or corrupted or compromised, you still have a way to recover. And that recovery begins from having the ability to access your data. It ensures that should the worst happen, you have a way to get back up and on your feet. Because once you're back up and on your feet and we've done the right things around data protection, you can get the rest of the way home because you know the data is still there and still surviving. Those are important pieces, but that's a big part of what cyber resilience is. So how do you achieve that cyber resilience? Well, phase 1, ultimately, you're going to try to reduce the risk. You want to use the tools and things you already have in place and make sure you're doing all the right things, and then plug the additional little holes along the way, should you not have those already there. That's things like coordinating information security, make sure that they are getting the information that they need from all available sources, but it's more than that. It's also making sure that that information is correlated in the right way, in the right SIM or logging tool to make an educated decision about what's going on with the environment. And that goes to those false positives and capturing those false negatives. It's making sure that the organization is doing the right things from a data protection standpoint, protecting not only what the data lives on, but also the data itself, using things like multi-factor authentication, security officer settings, immutability. At Dell, we call it retention lock. Doing the right things to make sure data is survivable, making sure that you're protecting your data no matter where it lives. So taking a look at your Microsoft 365, your Salesforce, your endpoints, your mobile devices, making sure that data is protected as well. It's making sure that you establish a cyber recovery solution, at least in its basic form, because that's going to ensure that availability of data when no other availability exists. And it's comprised of, the initial vault is comprised of 2 basic things. Number 1 is those things that make your environment work. We call them critical rebuild materials, or tier 0. It's all those router configs, switch configs, ADs, all those things that you're going to need no matter what. And then the second thing is the known critical applications and data. Those should be pretty low-hanging fruit that you can put into that environment. And then ideally having within that isolated cyber recovery environment the intelligence to look at that data to determine the integrity of the data, making sure that the data has not been compromised or corrupted due to malware. The other part under phase 1, under reducing the risk, is putting an incident response and recovery team on retainer. A couple of different reasons for that. If a cyber event happens, as compared to a DR event, the cyber event is going to be significantly more chaotic because there's going to be a lot more hands and eyes involved. It's going to be legal and HR and executive and everybody. So all hands on deck event. The second part is cyber events are variable. No two attacks are identical. So you need a team that has been there and can add organization to the chaos. That's what the incident response and recovery team is for. And having them on retainer eliminates the need, should you not be able to cut a PO, to be able to get back up and running, to get a PO cut before you can get any help. Having them on retainer puts you at the front of the line. So that's phase 1. Phase 2, now you get to the point where you're actually able to restore operations. You go through the rest of what it would take for your organization to get back up and on its feet. You do the application dependency analysis, things along those lines. You build a cyber run book, the order that they need to come back in, and then you test it. You test it again, and you test what you just tested, so that you build the muscle memory, you build that capability. At a moment's notice, you can jump into action. What I'll tell you is the two things that affect recovery time the most is, number one, the severity of the event. So you always prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But the second thing is your ability to execute the incident response plan. So now you've got the basics. Now you're able to actually recover the environment. But maybe the business wants it faster. They have a certain level of risk that they're willing to assume, a certain level of downtime that they're willing to assume. And the closer you get to 0-0 in terms of recovery point, recovery time, yes, the more expensive it gets. But this becomes a cost-benefit analysis at this point. Is it worth spending X to save Y? So now we look at ways that we can accelerate that recovery. And the ways that we can do that is with a clean room environment. Once you have data availability, the two things you need to be able to recover, number one is a clean environment to recover to. Number two is clean data. If you don't have both of those, you could repropagate. Well, why not have a small established clean room environment that you know is clean, that with the intelligence of the cyber solution, you can actually recover clean data. You can start staging that recovery while you remediate production. The second thing is we look at utilizing automation. Automation because, well, let's just call it what it is. Automated things can go faster than humans, and you have next to zero risk of having an error in the process. So that automatically accelerates that recovery time. Not automation for automation's sake, but automation in the right way so that it makes the most sense. That incident response and recovery, I can't emphasize this enough. It's a fast response from cybersecurity experts. And there are plenty of sources for that. Complete recovery and improved security. And again, folks that have been there, that vast expertise. A little thing about us, it's actually in my job description. I kind of have to show this, but from a Dell perspective and our leadership and what we've been doing, you know, we've been doing this for a very long time. We've been doing cyber recovery now since 2015. We perfected it in 2018. I actually started working when I was at IBM, now the Kyndryl side that was separated from IBM in 2017 with the Dell team on this, our particular solution. Then Dell decided to hire me. And we've expanded our capabilities. We've expanded our coverage. We've expanded what we can do and how we can do it. We work with companies all day, with our partners, every day. In fact, I was on 3 other calls already this morning with customers directly. you need to sit down, you need to have the conversation, an honest and frank conversation. And I will tell you, executives do need to be involved because it is a top-down process. The business owns the cyber risk. It's up to technology to remediate that risk based on the business, not the other way around. So I want to thank everybody for your time. Much appreciated. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Andy. If I remember exactly how to do this. I do. And Andy, you're good to go.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jason. That was great. Lots of good information there. Okay, I should be sharing now.
We got you.
Awesome. Okay. Everybody, thank you for joining. Jason gave us a lot of real good information, just the security landscape, and I'd like to tie things back to a bit about how GPL can help. As Jason just mentioned, these are all important conversations that need to be had. Attacking your security posture before we get into incidents is really key here. So I'd like to start a little bit by talking about who we are here at GPL and what we do. So the company was founded in 2003. We are heavily focused on the media and entertainment industry, really cut our teeth on the industry here. We understand workflows, we understand deadlines are key, and frames need to get out. We are headquartered here in Burbank, though we do have a New York office, and we have clients globally as well as staff that's global. So we are definitely a global company with support models that support every time zone. Again, we do really specialize in the media entertainment space. System design, implementation, support, content security, and ongoing managed services really is a partnership that we like to maintain with our clients. So I'd like to talk about our security program. So this really feeds into reducing risk, right? And the way we like to approach things is first really understanding business goals, objectives, understanding stakeholders and what their responsibilities are, and truly understand what the business does. Then go into infrastructures and current procedures and organizational charts and the technical part of things, right? So once we kind of get a good framework there, we'll go into how you're doing data handling and your actual policies and procedures, and start looking for any possible weak points, right? So we're looking for risk in the organization, we're very heavy on compliance, right? So there are TPN, MPA guidelines. Studios have their own guidelines that I'm sure many of us here present have dealt with in the past or are looking to deal with now. So I want to stress that it's not about check boxes. Yes, compliance is a lot of checking the boxes, but there's a lot more value than just being compliant and getting a sign off from a third party. It's really about protecting your company, your IP, your business, and making sure that nothing gets out with your watermark on it, or nothing gets in. Reducing risk as much as possible. So once we come in and assess all of this, we then start going into the recommendation phase. So we're going to find issues here or improvements that can be made. We'll once we kind of lay all that out, we'll move into an execution phase. So with our professional services team, we have a strong engineering team with expertise in cloud and virtualization and networking and firewalls, endpoint security, policies and procedures, governance, risk management. So we'll start building out projects to help remediate and just improve the security posture. But I think if we can take anything away from Jason's presentation, is that this is really an uphill battle. There is no set it and forget it in security. We're constantly addressing new threats. Bad actors are finding new ways to exploit things, and it's a constant battle. And as well as controls, compliance controls are also evolving at the same time. Workflows are evolving. If we saw a huge shift in the way we work here in the entertainment industry over the last few years, with people moving to the cloud, infrastructure moving to the cloud, people working from home. So compliance has evolved. It's not what it used to be a few years ago. We have more options now. There are more ways of getting work done. And that's sort of where our compliance as a service offering comes in, where it's really a partnership. We're there for the engagements, we're there for the consulting, but with the compliance as a service, we're really a partner. So as the landscape changes, as compliance changes, as security improvements are made within your organization, we're there to keep it going. So we're constantly engaged. Going a little bit deeper into that. So we do our monthly check-ins. We have our compliance baselines that we're building, and we're putting in that framework, and we're there for constant improvements. The goal is to keep those improvements going, but not impede the business. That's I think the most important part here, because we all need to work, and putting security controls in place that make it impossible for the work to get done is not good for the business. So we need to approach it in an intelligent way. We need to approach it in a phased manner, and most of the time making smaller changes while really considering the workflow that is truly unique for everybody. Though a lot of us in the industry are maybe doing similar things, everybody's workflow is different. And so taking all of that into account and really building that partnership to keep that the security improvements going is key, we find. Some additional things that we provide, security awareness training, phishing simulations. This is ongoing. We'll build a security awareness platform and just keep this going with employees that are onboarded. It'll be an automated system, and that we control, and that we really customize for our industry. Vulnerability monitoring and testing, so both internal and external, anything you're hosting, any file transfer servers, any application servers. Internal, we definitely have compliance needs for the vulnerability testing, but it's also important to do. We need to understand where our risks are in the organization. We take that further with network monitoring and of course configuration support. So as I mentioned, we do have a senior engineering staff that will be involved in network configuration, segmentation, monitoring, utilization, and alerting and logging. Then we have penetration testing, of course, which is taking vulnerability testing a few steps further and really trying to dig as deep as we possibly can. And then there's zero trust infrastructure control that Jason had also spoken about. Zero trust has become a bit of a buzzword in recent years, but the idea is strong. The less that we can allow without explicitly knowing what we're allowing at all times is super important. The days of just default allow or default or any rules in firewalls and networks or anything like that, those days are gone. We need to keep that granular control going, and that's really where the zero trust infrastructure control comes from. So it's not just a buzzword; it is important. Please reach out. Let's get a conversation going. Small projects, large projects. We're here to help. We're here to be a partner. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you so much, Jason. That was really great and very informative. For the last few minutes or so, we wanted to open up the floor for questions, and we already have one in the question area, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it out loud for you guys. Jason and Andy, feel free to have at it. This question is from Thomas. It is there a specific software and hardware to monitor and prevent attacks? Is that what GPL does? This one's for you, Andy.
A specific one? No, we will find the right product, the right solution based on each customer's needs. There is no one product that does it all. It's always a combination, and more so than an actual product, it comes down to practice more so than the tool that's used.
Thank you. Next up. And Thomas says thank you as well. Next up, we have the question that says, I feel like every week we hear something new about cyber attacks happening, yet it feels like companies aren't conscious about cyber attacks, or they think this won't happen to me. In your experience, what percentage of companies are truly aware of their exposure to cyber attacks?
Wow, that's a loaded question. That's a loaded question. How many are actually aware? I think they're all aware. Here's what I would say. How many are actually doing something about it? And again, this kind of comes down to where does the conversation begin? If we can get that awareness and that concern at a higher level within the organization, things get done a lot faster. When you're sitting and no anything against IT or anybody else along those lines, but that becomes more of a budget constraint when those that are, let's just be honest, affected the most, executives, things along those lines. We actually have a member of our office of the CTO that was at Sony when that happened with Sony. But when you're at that higher range and you look at the risk and compliance, the cost of doing nothing versus the cost of doing something, things actually start to happen, and it actually makes sense when you do it from a business level. So are they aware? Everybody's aware, and that's why I don't share a whole lot of statistics about, oh, it's this much on average and you're this much more likely. And we all know it's a problem. It's the question is, what are we doing about it to help mitigate the risk. And that's why I kind of lay out the phase 1, the phase 2, and the phase 3. Number 1 is we gotta do the right things to mitigate the risk. And then we got to figure out the rest of it.